declare open this hearing of the Public Accounts and Estimates Committee. I ask that mobile telephones please be turned to silent. I begin by acknowledging the traditional Aboriginal owners of the land on which we are meeting, the lands of the Wurundjeri people. We pay our respects to them, their elders past, present and emerging, as well as elders from other communities who may be here with us today. On behalf of the Parliament, the committee is conducting this inquiry into the 2025-26 budget estimates. The committee's aim is to scrutinise public administration and finance to improve outcomes for the Victorian community.
Minister, in relation to the early intervention investment framework, this budget has substantially increased the investment into prison budgets, but looking at this page, there's a cut to investment in early intervention by more than a third. Minister, in your assessment, does this not contradict your commitment to this framework?
Thank you, Mr Pulgali, for that question. I think as a budget, what I would say is I think it reconfirms that our government is committed to our focus on community safety, but also our focus on preventing people coming into contact with the criminal justice system doesn't just end with those intervention programs. I would say, especially in the youth setting, but across the board, I think the investments that our government makes is about keeping people out of the criminal justice system. That can start from a little child in free kinder to primary secondary education and through to free TAFE, which is about skills and training, which is an important employment factor, important protective factor. But so I'd say you can't just take one line item and say we're not investing, we're investing across the board, and all that work is about making sure people live happy and healthy lives away from crime.
Sure. A $386 million cut to that figure, though, what's the rationale for that?
I dispute the premise of that. I think there's a lot of investments across the board that are focused. Some of the best interventions are not necessarily in the criminal justice system. They're so that people avoid the criminal justice system, in education, in health, in early childhood. So I think that's why I think taking just specific line items is comparing apples and oranges. I don't think it's a fair comparison to make. Moving on,
I understand there's $9.8 million listed under supporting a safe and effective correction system, budget paper 3, page 70. From what I can see, this is the total listed in this budget for specifically reducing recidivism, which we know is a key driver of crime rates. Can I ask why is such a minute proportion of the total criminal justice funding?
I think, Ms Puglia, I think my presentation said that we're one of the national leaders in this area, so 37% recidivism rate, which is much lower than the national average. A lot of the work we already do as part of that 1.6 billion in our custodial facilities is focused on rehabilitation and preventing reoffending, employment engagement, education engagement, better health services across our sites. I think that's key. So I think, again, taking one line item is not necessarily a reflection of the whole system. I view that as a core job, to be honest. Community safety and rehabilitation go hand in hand because that's how you have long-term community safety.
Are there any young people that currently have ankle bracelets? Has that trial started?
Yeah. I think Mr Puglia, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about electronic monitoring. And yes, that trial has now begun. From the end of April, we gave the opportunity. That tool is an option for the courts. I can say that there's been a number of quite a few assessments. So the process is youth justice will assess whether a young person's suitable for in the first place as part of the court process, but then it'll be up to the judicial decision maker. It's my understanding that there has been already a couple decisions already, but there's many more that have been assessed by youth justice, so they're going through the courts. So 2 already. Yeah.
The overall youth justice custodial services budget line, which is for rehabilitation and community reintegration support for young people in custody, looking at that line item, that's dropped from it's 274.2 million this year, down from 296.3 million last year. It's a 7.5% decline. Given the recent bail changes, though, shouldn't we be substantially increasing that line item if you're going to be locking up more young people?
We've brought some of the money forward already because to start the work immediately. So Treasury has released the funds so that the department can get on and start, because you're right, we are seeing an increase in custodial settings. Yeah.
Given the increased number of young people entering custody, should we expect a negative impact on services?
In what context, Mr Puglia? Because I think we're going to be ramping up services in custody at the same time. So
right, but no strain on those services because you've got more young people.
I think there's always a high demand for services, especially because the young people that enter into our system. I said we're at the end of the process. those young people that come to us have a range of issues. Some of them overlap with health and mental health. They overlap with a lack of educational need and support, and obviously cultural disconnection as well. So I think, of course, there will be greater demand on those services. And I will say we've done a great job in filling the roles in youth justice compared to maybe other frontline services, but there is a high demand for clinicians in this field. We have partnerships with Origin as well in terms of mental health. And also, in addition to that, there was a lot of, I won't say prohibition, but there was barriers for people that were on remand to access some of the programs because they involved an element of admission of guilt. So we've removed those barriers as well. So from the day one young people engaged or in our youth justice custodial facilities, we can provide the kind of behavioural programs.
Minister, can I get an assessment from you? Your overall youth justice budget, what proportion of that is for detention as opposed to diversion and prevention?
I think I've answered this, Mr. Pugliari, before. I think diversion intervention is a whole of government effort. We don't want to see young people come into our custodial facilities in the first place because custodial facilities in themselves are important, that they're well resourced, and there's an economies of scale here. So they are obviously a significant investment in community safety.
With regards to the delay of the commencement of the carded play trial, was this delay a request of the Australian Hotels Association?
I think I was clear, Mr. Pugliari. We had this debate in the Legislative Council. The delay was about making sure that we future-proof this important reform. I'm committed to pre-commitment account-based play, but we've got to look at a system that can stand the test of time. And obviously, carded play is one option, but that relies on the mag strips, which have been around for decades. I think account-based play, we talk about that in other contexts, our people are not using cards as much. We need to make sure that these reforms, we get it right. And also looking what's happening in other jurisdictions, in South Australia, New South Wales being the bordering states, looking what's happening there to make sure our system, how does it align with them.
Thanks. Can I ask about facial recognition technology?
Yeah. So
are you aware that that technology only works for people who've already got self-exclusion in place, so proportionally that's a very small number of people?
I think facial recognition technology is quite successful for the people that have self-excluded. There's 13,000 people that have self-excluded, and the current method relies on staff kind of being able to identify the 13,000 faces, which is not really very practicable. So this is, I think, it's important. It might be complementary. That's the model that South Australia has. New South Wales seems to be going that model with some slight changes. They haven't landed their final position yet, but I would say it's not and or. I think there's potentially there's a different purpose.
And so that particular technology, therefore, for people who have not self-excluded, that's not offering them a harm reduction?
In short answer, its facial recognition is targeted to self-exclusion. New South Wales is looking at self-exclusion, potentially with third-party exclusion. So that's why I said New South Wales will be very different. So I'm closely watching what they're doing. But in itself, as it exists, it would only be for the people that have self-exclusion. The people with an identified problem, not necessarily for the people with an emerging problem. So you're right in that regard.
Are you aware that the industry has been pushing for that technology instead of the pre-commitment and carded play system?
I think the industry has been committed to seeing gambling harm minimisation in a way that's sustainable. We're going to understand that gambling is a legal sector in our state. It's important that it's regulated well to minimise harm, but it is a legal sector that needs to be sustainable going forward as well. So I think the sector has made a number of suggestions. Facial recognition technology is what's in place in South Australia statewide. New South Wales seems to be going through down that path, that model, with a few changes. But in Victoria, I'm committed to account-based play.
Minister, do you accept the industry isn't going to accept harm reduction measures that hurt their profit margins?
I think we know whenever government makes reforms, there'll be, regardless of this portfolio or other portfolios, that people may have a different view. I think we're committed to seeing harm minimisation. That's why we introduced the closures from 4 a.m. to 10 a.m. That's why we increased spin rates. That's why we introduced load-up limits. And at Crown, we've even gone further.
I declare this hearing adjourned.